Everybody, welcome to our Abundance Digital Sit Down with Tony Robbins. Tony, a pleasure.
It's our annual time together.
Our annual time together.
We have a little more than that, but annual time on camera.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a pleasure to have a chance to share the particular topics and questions that the Abundance Digital community wants to hear from both of us about.
Yeah.
And on this occasion, I want to hit on the future of work, which is something we talk about a lot. We both are concerned about it.
Critical issue.
Absolutely. We're talking about the actual impact of technology in education. And I'd like to actually hear about how you're thinking about using technology in the work that you do in coaching.
I'd love to do it.
Absolutely. We're going to go on the future of food, a subject that's super passionate.
Very
It's
passionate.
your massively transformative purpose, your moonshot. Go into a subject of interest to both of us, longevity, I think to everybody here. How do we add those extra 20, 30 healthy years in everybody's life? I think inspiration and community. Where do you get your inspiration from? Where do I get it from? And then I know that the Abundance Digital community has a number of sort of personal questions that they've asked me to ask you.
Great.
And if that's okay.
So pitch and catch, it'll be fun.
Absolutely.
Great.
So let's kick off. And again, thank you to our Abundance Digital members for joining, for being part of this. Those of you who are not members of Abundance Digital, you'll have a chance to find out what it's all about and how to get involved if you so choose.
So why don't we start with the future of work, because we both are pretty passionate about the concerns in that area. You know, most of us know technology is displacing jobs. In the past, you know, if you look at 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, we were farmers, 80%. Now it's less than 3%, and we feed the whole world. So those jobs disappeared and they were replaced by other jobs. No one ever thought that, you know, being a webmaster or writing copy, you know, for websites would be something. But the difference today that you and I both note is that the pace of change is so different. That took a century for people to integrate. Now the tempo's different. So my first question for you and for our audience is technology really displacing jobs, or are they just being replaced? And if that's currently true, do you see that continuing where we're able to destroy certain jobs, create new ones, become more productive as human beings, do things that aren't so repetitive but that are more meaningful? Or are we going to go at such a tempo like Ray would talk about, Kurzweil, of, hey, it gets to a velocity speed where all of a sudden we have people out of work and you got the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. So where do you see that and how do we address it?
And the challenge is that the data is on both sides of the fence, right? So there's no question that the speed of disruption is increasing, that we're seeing Amazon Go, you know, with these completely automated shops you go into, there's no cashier, no checkout person, no one stocking. Eventually it's going to be robots and AI taking the majority of these jobs. And the stats that we've seen, you and I have had these conversations, is that 40, 50, 60% of jobs domestically, even a larger percentage overseas in the developing world, getting lost. And the question is, can we uplift ourselves and actually partner with AI and robotics to do that? And I don't know, but what I do know is I see a lot of fear.
Yeah.
And I think this is where our partnership is come in. We want to talk about what are the stats showing us, but how do you reduce that fear in people? Because it's it's hitting not only our income, but our sense of purpose.
Meaning.
Yeah.
I agree. I think the easy, you see people on two extremes usually when we talk to people. They're either like, they're a technology person, and so technology solves everything and it'll be perfect no matter what. And you know, maybe that's true, I don't know. I think it's true long term. I don't know if it's gonna be true in the short term because of the pace of change. And then you see other people that it's the end times in their mind because we're gonna have total anarchy. The truth is probably somewhere between the two, we both know that.
Yeah, I mean, I just sat down literally last week with our mutual friend Ray Kurzweil.
Yes.
We're talking about brain-computer interface, right? So a moment in time, Ray's prediction is the early 2030s, where we're connecting our neocortex with the cloud.
Yeah.
And you can spin up, you know, 1,000,000 times your better memory or processing power.
That's 11 years from this moment.
It's crazy. It is insane. So
but he's been accurate in his predictions.
86% of the time.
Yeah, almost 90% of the time. It's pretty wild.
So at the end of the day, you know, what does a job mean? I mean, what I think about is most of today's jobs, most people have a job,
but they don't necessarily love their job by any stretch
that wasn't
of
what they
imagination.
dreamt about doing.
It's
right?
dread for most people.
It's what I need to do to put food on the table, need to get insurance for my family, it's what I need to do to survive, right?
That's what I always tell people, what's the difference between work and play? Purpose.
Yeah.
When it's work, it feels like it's work. When I ask people, what do you do? What's your work, or what's your mission, or what's your career? If they say work, it is work. If they say career, there's a more compelling aspect to it. They're building something. If it's their mission, they'll do it 24 hours a day, like you and I, and not sleep and keep going, because it feeds them. So it's finding the meaning that is really the critical piece. And I think the opportunity that technology brings is the freeing up of those repetitive tasks that do not require you to really grow and expand as a spirit, as a soul, as a human being. And so that's the opportunity. The question is the bridge. So if we have this massive disruption, if it happens too quickly, what's your view of UBI, of Universal Basic Income?
Yeah, so I think we're going to have to separate the idea of I work to make income versus I work because I love it, it's my mission and purpose in life, versus I work for other reasons. And there are other reasons. I work because it makes my family proud. I work because it's fun versus my mission.
It's fulfilling.
It's fulfilling. So UBI is about I work for income. And I think we're demonetizing the cost of living. And most people don't realize this, the things that you spend money on, right? So buying a car, autonomous electric cars, car as a service that's coming is going to knock your car payments per month down a factor of 5 or 10, where you're being chauffeured, right, and have lots of free time, and there's no more car payments. And by the way, if I'm able to I live in Santa Monica, where it's really expensive. If I were willing to live an hour away, I could drop my housing costs down by probably a factor of 2 or 3 more. So we're demonetizing it. Electricity is coming down from 7 cents per kilowatt hour with coal down to eventually 1 penny or less from solar, and then we have clean water. So the things that education and healthcare, I think AI is going to deliver us eventually completely demonetize education and healthcare. So I think earning it, I think UBI is going to be important. I think it's going to be here. I think there's no question when you talk to folks like Elon Musk and Larry Page and Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos, they've all bought into the idea that UBI, Universal Basic Income, where you get paid something every month for just being a citizen of your country.
It's a dividend of your country. It's a benefit of our economy for everybody there. But the idea is having that number be small enough that people still have a desire to work, because you don't want to take away that aspect and yet have a basic level of appreciation. But I think the biggest thing is meaning. There's statistics that are wild. Men and women respond differently to this, by the way. And that is when a man retires, you look at the insurance agencies and they'll show you he dies within 5 years.
It's crazy. Do not retire.
It's like, as some people say, when are you going to retire? Never. But on the other side, women don't, because women have a different sense of responsibility of things that are meaningful to them, whether it be family or children. And I know that sounds like a generalization, but it's an accurate one statistically. And so I think it's really figuring out what's going to make things more meaningful. You and I shared the idea, I think it was your original idea or somebody that we talked with at one point, about the idea that what's really disrupting is technology and some form of dividend specifically from that robot or that group that replaced that job. Talk about that.
So one of the ideas is, instead of universal basic income, imagine the idea of universal basic ownership.
Yes.
So if I'm an Uber driver today and I make my income from driving that Uber, but tomorrow there is a autonomous distributed network that includes no humans, what if instead of me just losing my job, what if I were the owner of that autonomous Uber? And it was working for me. So you become the king and the queen or the pharaoh with all these robotic slaves working for you. There's still meaning to be had in, or pride of that workforce doing things for you.
It's something that I'm doing that still supports it, because we still need to have some tie to rewards for some form of effort, because you and I both know you can take, it's corny, but you get something without effort, and how long do you value it?
It's zero. Yeah, it's gone.
And the more effort you put into it, like, all the friends that we have that, are unbelievably successful on a cultural scale, on a world scale, whenever you hang out and talk with them, what do we all talk about? The early days, the tough days. It was such a bitch. It was so difficult. We made it through. Or
what's the next crazy thing
That's the other piece. Both those two. So it's creation and it's understanding the effort that it took to make that happen that makes you value it. So somehow we have to find that balance. And you and I are going to do that each year now. Why don't you share with people what we're doing?
In late November, early December, the date is being fixed right now. Tony and I are going to do a global town hall in which we're going to identify what are the leading entrepreneurs who are working on this concept of the future of work. And not from necessarily only a universal basic income, but from a meaning standpoint of, we're going to have technological disruption of jobs. It's a fact The question is whether people step up to the next level.
And retool. Because it's really
Absolutely.
retool. Retool first your psychology, retool your skills so that you can not only compete, but you can grow. Because universal basic income is not going to give you a great life. It's going to give you a foundation where there's no fear. And I say to people, life is the dance between what you desire most and what you fear most. So if I want to help you expand your life, the way I do it is first try to get rid of as much of the fear, and second is expand the desire, the hunger, the drive. And I think that's what you and I are really looking for, is how do we do that by working with some of the smartest people in the world and saying, what are some of the solutions? Because right now there is no coordinated effort. You and I were talking about this with President Obama. I've been with multiple presidents, asked him,
it's scary.
what can be done? And he said, I don't know, nobody knows the answer. And it's like, he's a very bright man and he really cares. But he can't get an answer, and so the mindset becomes, well, we'll deal with it when we get there. And you and I both know that's not how it works when technology is that disruptive.
So our goal is we're going to do a global call for ideas. We're going to find what are the entrepreneurs out there with the best ideas who are actually doing things. Maybe it's in the cryptocurrency or the tokenization world. Maybe it's in policy world. We don't know yet, but we're going to make a call, and then our job is find the best ideas and then give a global stage to those ideas every year and highlight them and pour our support. So if you're a member of the Abundance Digital community, I'll be asking you for your ideas, and please start thinking about them.
Let's talk about education, because that's really, you look at what's happened in your life, my life, almost most human beings' life who started one place and were able to build a life or create a life they desire. Education is the basis, corny as it sounds. And education, as you and I know it, is one of the challenges, because now you have the internet with all this access where, as we always talk about, a guy in Africa with a phone has more power than Clinton had when I coached him as president of the United States. But it's like, what do we do now to change that when you've got, 1 out of 7 human beings on this planet that are illiterate? And you got 250 million children who are illiterate. So we built an X Prize.
You know your numbers, pal.
Oh, yeah, hell yes, I know the numbers. Because if we change that, you change completely the world of competition. Suddenly poverty changes. And we've already, share with them, if you would, what are the statistical changes we've seen over the last 50 years in poverty, how much we've really raised it, so people see we can only build on success. This isn't some magic formula, but let's talk about our X Prize and what we're going to do in this area and what we're already doing in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the poverty numbers, we've taken 200 years ago, 96% of the world, population-wise, was in extreme poverty, right? We're talking about $1 a day, minimal survival. And we've dropped that down from about 95% down to about 15%, and we're within striking distance in the next 10, 20 years to take it down to 0%, right?
And it's happening, and the biggest place it's happened is really in the third world, but it's also been in China and India, correct?
It's globally. We're seeing the massive increase in the middle class. And one of the things that people talk about, wow, there's this giant wealth divide between the rich and the poor. And yes, there is. But let me reframe the idea here. It's not about the have and the have-nots. It's going to a world of haves and super haves, right? It's going towards a world where every man, woman, and child on this planet has access to food, energy, healthcare, water, all of these things. And yes, there are those people living on Mars and with,
But the super haves have had to do something to add enough value to the rest of the population, or they couldn't be a super have. That's the piece that most people don't get.
And what I teach in Abundance Digital and at SU is that the best way to become a billionaire is help a billion people.
That's right. Solve the problem for a billion people.
That's right. The world's biggest problem is the world's biggest business opportunities. So we've seen this massive reduction in extreme poverty, and the numbers in education are tracking. We're seeing this amazing move. So thank you. It was Tony Robbins and Elon Musk and the DeVos family and Scott Hassan were the principal funders of something we call the Global Learning X Prize. And here was the challenge. We asked teams around the world, build an Android app. And why Android? Because it's the most prevalent operating system out there for phones. Build an Android app that takes a child in the middle of no place from illiteracy to reading, writing, and numeracy on their own. No adults, no schools.
Which will explain why. How in the hell could you ever go to scale with teachers at this stage with 1 out of 7 humans?
You can't build enough schools.
That's right.
You can't teach enough teachers. And by the way, just to be clear, technology is not going to teach us everything.
No.
But some of the basics to allow you to self-educate after that, it can handle. So we had about 700 teams enter this Global Education X Prize. 134 of them delivered software. We narrowed it down to 5 finalists.
Now they're in Tanzania, right?
And we Google gave us about 5,000 tablets, 2,500 for students and 2,500 backups for when they break them, which they will break. They get dropped.
But it's amazing, isn't it, to see how quickly they can pick and navigate with no help.
And
it's
so
just chill.
Literally,
it's so intuitive for kids.
We took these tablets and we gave them to the kids, all we taught one village elder how to plug in the solar panels.
Yeah.
That was it. The kids had to turn them on, learn to navigate them. And we did testing. These are completely literate in Swahili and English. There's no reading, writing, language skills at all. And we're halfway through. We're going to have the results in late spring of 2019.
Yep.
So excited about that. But they're going on right now. And it's about changing how we educate. And so I've been asked this question. I'm going to ask you as well, which is, do you see your education industry, you're an educator, you and I are both educators. Do you see using AI or AR or VR in what you're doing in the future?
All the above. Next VR is a company I think you know that I own, that we do sports live events. That's why I wanted to start with that technology because it's easy. People don't want to be educated, they want to be entertained.
Yes, absolutely.
And so what I've learned to do is be a very entertaining educator so I can hold people for 50 hours in a weekend. But I'm working right now on an AI with a really cool group, and Ray Kurzweil's part of it, that is, I have everything I've ever done recorded for 41 years, every intervention. And then I'm so disciplined after every break in an event, I then say, here's what I did, here's why I did it. So we not only have the actual interactions, but we have the principles behind it. So we're programming the AI to do three things.
I think we both know this company. They haven't debuted yet.
No, they have. I was not going to say the name of it yet, but the bottom line is we're going to bring some of the greatest minds together. But in my case, I'm the first one because A, I wanted to do it, but B, because I have so much data. And all really you're doing with AI, it's machine learning. It's massive learning.
We're going to train an AI to think like you.
I already have, in this short period of time, within a year we should have the first version, but I already have the audio version, and it's scary. They wanted me to, Money Master the game I wrote, and it's 670 pages, and I wanted it out so I could feed people, and I wanted it on a certain deadline, and SNS, Simon & Schuster, was like, oh my God, we've never done this in our life. I said, come on, you got to work with me on it. So then they came to me and said, you got to do the audio, and I said, 674 pages? I said, I don't want any money, I'll do it for free, but I'm only gonna do the first chapter and the last chapter, I just don't have that many hours. My AI now, already, we can just hand it to it. I don't even go to the studio. You cannot tell it's not me. And it reads it as if it was me. And I get to not go to the studio. So that's the beginning. But what I'm interested in is the ability to coach people one-on-one, because my AI has three capacities. Number one, it has a memory way beyond mine. I have a decent memory, a pretty good memory, but nothing like this machine. Two, it's programmed with my values. It lives and exists to help people change and transform their life and their business. And thirdly, it has all my core strategies. So when someone's in an audience and they're speaking, above their head as they listen, I start hearing their need structure, because my goal is not to get them to do what I want, it's to get them to do what they want and what they need. So their goals, their desires, their need structures, their patterns, whether they're driven by moving towards motivation or moving away from motivation. And so when people talk, that floats above their head for me visually. The AI does this physically already at this first beginning stage.
Awesome.
So it watches you and it uses facial recognition that's better than I have, right? Because I know overall what you're feeling, but it knows 20% of that is concern and 30% of that is excitement, and you have both those emotions simultaneously. What's your level of engagement? Every word you speak is printed out, and I'm listening for language because it tells me your beliefs. It highlights the language and provides the intervention. This is at the earliest stage. So my partners think in 1 year, I'll have something. I've already sat down and I did the digital recording 360 degree with 450 cameras, and I did the MoCat, so I'll be able to dance now. It's an amazing thing. I have no ability in that area.
And you'll never age.
And I'll never age. And we've got different stages of it, but all of it is captured already. But now, within a year, they say we'll have something that'll blow people away. I say in 3 years, I'll be happy. In 10 years, it'll be smarter than I am. You know the nature of it. And this is my way to pour my consciousness. I don't know if I'll be alive when Ray's predictions happen.
Well, we're working on it, pal.
But I'm taking care of my body to make sure I can. But regardless, the idea that I continue to touch lives, not just through books or audios, but in an interactive way that's personal to you, that you could call, you pop on the web or your phone or Alexa and ask a question, and we could interact.
Yeah.
And you can't tell the difference, and it's getting smarter all the time, and it knows everything you personally experience.
And this is
private.
It's closest to the movie Her, if you remember Her, right?
Yes.
It's a conversation you can have that you feel it's you.
Yes.
And then
it will be. It'll be my
and
consciousness.
it will be. And then eventually, and I've seen a company called Soul Machines right now is creating digital humans, visually digital humans.
But those are programmed. That's not real AI.
Agreed,
but
we're
we're using the visuals from them and some other groups, the very best of that. You will, visually it'll knock your socks off, but that's already done. Most things you're seeing that are called AI are really just programmed. This is real AI, and it's coming right away. So I believe that the answer of the answers I need from the best minds in the world at my fingertips, anywhere in the world, 365, 24/7. That's my biggest focus.
So in the future, you're going into a job interview and you need some coaching on how to think about that, and you can call up Tony, who's like, "Hey, Peter, what can I help you with?" And
it's always, and it's individual, and everything is not just available. It's only in the AI, so the memory is kept within that AI personality, so it's not available anywhere else. So there's total privacy. And a lot of people won't even tell a live person something, but they will once they develop this relationship, I believe. So It's an exciting time, but this is not 20 years from now. This is the next 2 and 3 years.
Yeah,
and 5 years.
This is scaling globally. This is
That's exactly right.
I talk about the 6 Ds, right? Whatever you digitize enters a period of slow, deceptive growth. Then it becomes disruptive, and it dematerializes Tony, it demonetizes Tony, and it democratizes Tony.
That's exactly right.
And
it costs next to nothing, and you can have all that you need.
Absolutely. It's awesome.
Pretty cool.
So the future of education is extraordinary. I'll add one other element that I'm excited about, which mixes us all in. I got 2 7-year-old boys, and they're living, not as much as they want to, but they're living in Minecraft. They're living in these virtual worlds. And I think what's extraordinary is in the future, if I want them to learn about their heritage in ancient Greece, they'll enter a virtual world where they'll have conversations with Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, and there will be an visual AI, and just the same way that you've been digitized and all of your knowledge has been sort of formatted into a set of neural networks, so will the writings of these greats.
Yes.
And so everything, literally better than the best historian would know, because every word's been consumed.
Well, I always say to people that a belief is a poor substitute for an experience. And what AI provides, and all these technologies, these virtual technologies, is the ability to experience it directly as opposed just through somebody else. And to explore the way you want to explore, to be curious, to uncover. That's when education gets dynamic. That's when people love education. Education, if someone telling you something you memorize or regurgitate, that's not education, that's memorization. Right? So I think the capacity to have no limits in what you learn and create, it's here right now, but it's only going to go geometric, and the cost through the floor, so that literally anybody, and people always say, who would you like in history to have met? Well, you'll be able to now.
Every single one of them. Philip Rosedale, do you know Philip?
I don't know Philip.
So Philip's a dear friend. He's the creator of Second Life. You know his work, right? And the CEO of High Fidelity. And he'll be one of my guests at A360 this year. One of the demos that we're bringing is they have gone into Nefertiti's tomb, and they have imaged the entire tomb in super high resolution, right? Every nook and cranny. And so you're going to put on the high fidelity gear and go in with an Egyptologist who will tour you around, and you can look around, and you've got this digital flashlight, and you can ask, what does that mean, and sort of jump up on things. So again, being able to go to places and have experiences that are either unaffordable or inaccessible, but you have it as much as you want. Yeah, so it's so awesome.
It's crazy. Let's talk about food.
Yeah,
I know it's kind of boring to some people, but you got
not for those
49 million people. We're the richest country in the world. This just blows my mind. 49 million people don't know where their next meal is going to come from, in the United States alone. Richest country in the world. 17 million are children. I was one of those kids. That's why I'm so passionate about it. So, with Feeding America, we've been feeding 100 million people a year. I have with my partners there for 4 years in a row, 400 million people. We're going to feed 1 billion in the next 6 years. But I'm committed to feeding the next billion, and we're doing an X Prize on that in a sustainable way around the world, because right now it's about 900 million people. 4 children die every minute, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year of hunger, in a world where there's plenty of food, right? It's distribution, it's the quality of it. So maybe we can talk a little about the X Prize and a little bit about what are we going to do in this area, because when you're hungry, all those other values kind of go out the door. People go back to caveman type of mentality. They get really crazy. So, or they just give up. And either one is destructive to the human spirit.
Yeah, I know. It's the Maslow's hierarchy. It's so fundamental. And so first of all, thank you. You and an organization named FAR are co-funding a effort right now to figure out what should the X Prize be there. And our challenge to teams designing a Feed the Next Billion People is what should it be? And the attack is going to be interesting, right? Because there's so many different parts of the system that are broken. One is, what do you do with all the food that is left over on your plate? That's the first part. The second is the notion that, one of my favorites is that the majority of your food at a meal, when you sit down at a nice restaurant, half the food cost is transportation.
That's right.
And that, those bites of food have on the average traveled like 1,600 miles to get to your plate. It's a ridiculous number.
And the food we're raising, it is destroying the planet in many cases because the selection of food that our culture has conditioned us to do. Let's talk about some of the companies that are coming out. It's kind of scary to some people and exciting to others.
Yeah.
That are looking for these replacements for, let's say, traditional beef, where a one cow consumes the equivalent of a destroyer's worth of water for one cow. The methane being released. Talk a little bit about that for those that don't know, and then talk about what the alternatives are that are coming.
Yeah. So the numbers are pretty staggering in terms of the impact of farm-raised animals around the planet. It is truly, from a use of clean water, from a methane production, from a use of land, it dominates us, yes, right? Completely. Cows dominate. This is not a world of humans, it's a world of cows. And so there are companies like Just, our friend
yes.
Josh Tetrick, who's doing
brilliant.
that. There's brilliant. And Modern Meadows and others. And the concept is, rather than raising an entire cow to have access to that marbleized beef that you so desire, what if you could just actually manufacture that beef? So what do you think of food? Food is what? Food is taking the energy from the sun and actually converting it through photosynthesis to hydrocarbons, carbohydrates, and into your body, or into the cow's body, and then into meat. So could you in fact bypass that entire process and take a muscle stem cell sample from a cow and then grow the meat?
And could that be better for the environment? Could that be better for animals in terms of cruelty? Could it still provide the protein sources? And
taste better? Could it be healthier for you?
And we both know some of it does taste really better. We've had the experience, because he's hired, how many chefs does he have?
Yeah, he's got so many Michelin star chefs that are working on taking his food products and manufacturing them into
because Josh's whole approach is, I don't want to just have something that's healthy, or I don't want to have something that's the alternative. I want to make something that tastes better than anything else, because that's the way you win, right?
Yeah. So it's so Just and the various companies like it are reinventing the entire food process. One of my favorites is, can we get to vertical farming? Can we create a capability in downtown Chicago or Dubai or Athens or wherever it might be? Can we grow the food in a three-dimensional format in which the building it's growing in is operating 24/7? Yeah. The frequency of light is the perfect frequency for that particular plant. The chemicals and the pH of the water is perfect, and it is literally produced where the average distance it travels is instantaneous. It's half a kilometer.
Yeah.
So there's lots of interesting things. I'm excited. We're going to be.
Who's leading the charge there that you're seeing? Because I'm aware of there's lots of small organizations I'm familiar with. Who's somebody that you're inspired by in that area?
Right now, there isn't anybody that I've seen.
Okay.
There is experiments going on. That's why I'm hopeful that a X Prize might actually get hundreds of experiments going around the world.
Love it.
And at the end of the day, it's producing food that is healthy and cheap and available when you need it. There's a wide variety. One of the other areas that I just saw as an X Prize idea in the food is reinventing the soil we're using, because we deplete the soil so awfully by growing the same cash crops over and over again.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's interesting. I'm not sure that the X Prize on turning us into photosynthetic beings is going to be what I choose for.
It might be a little early.
But
go ahead. So we'll talk about the X Prize itself. We're going to generate an X Prize that's going to bring the greatest minds together to compete to come up with these answers. We don't have the answers. We have pieces of the answers. We're looking for your help, and we're going to look for the community's help to really come up with those and fund it. And just like the Education X Prize, we didn't mention it, but when that Education Prize is done, we'll award the team. That software is open source.
Yeah, I love that part. That part of the X Prize is, imagine we manufacture 1 billion Android handsets a year. Imagine after you've thrown that handset away, it becomes a teacher.
Yeah.
Right? I opened my drawer, I was moving, and I had 5 old phones in my drawer, right? It's like, I meant to give them away, donate them, give them some, but ultimately those are all supercomputers with incredible magical skills.
Yeah. As long as we're talking about food and water and the ability to educate, let's talk about how long we get to enjoy all of this and be a part of it. Let's talk about longevity, because you and I are both passionate about it. We just got back from being in Rome at the Vatican at that Unite to Cure, and there were things there. We're actually here in the offices of one of those organizations because we're here to interview them for our new book. But it was things that, I know you and I were sitting next to each other and watching all these other doctors and researchers, many of them like this, until they start seeing the stats.
Said, holy shit.
And it's like, my God, things you would think would happen in 20 years from now are happening in the next 2.5 or 3 years. They're in phase 2 trials, some of them phase 3 trials. So let's talk about how long can we really live? I mean, it used to be, 100 years ago, 40 years, and now 100 years later, we're 80 years old is the longevity. What are the biggest breakthroughs in that area? And let's talk about also, there's a funny moment that I want the audience to hear about too, which is when you were out there talking about living to whatever the period of time, and some of the people there, they weren't even raising their hand that they had an interest. Not everybody has the equal interest in longevity, right? So,
it's fascinating, right? And I'm saying, okay, you don't have to live forever, but I'll take those extra years, or my friend Tony here will. So let's put this in context.
Yes.
And you're right. So 100 years ago, for us, as an average male, 40 years was typical average lifespan.
That's right.
And now it's doubled, and you and I are working diligently on doubling it again.
Yeah.
But if you think about it,
and the tools we have today dwarf. All we have is sanitation, basically, and nutrition supportive, right?
Exactly. So let's put this in context. I mean, hopefully all of you join us in our mission and vision of wanting to know what you can do to add 20, 30, 40 healthy years onto your life, because once you do that, you then intercept more science and more technology that extends your life even further. My friends Aubrey de Grey and Ray Kurzweil call that longevity escape velocity, that for every year that you're alive, science extends your life for more than a year. But I want to put this in context. People understand, like, why aren't we doing that now? So for all of human history, you would go into puberty at age 13. It was probably earlier back in caveman time.
You were a grandfather by 25, 26 in those days, right?
Absolutely. So you're having a baby at age 13, and by age 25, 26, your baby was having a baby. And before Whole Foods and McDonald's was around, before food was abundant and it was scarce, the last thing you wanted to do was steal food from your grandchildren's mouth if your mission was to perpetuate your genes.
That's right.
And so you would do the best thing, which is give your bits back to the environment. You'd die, and your clan would continue. And so there was no evolutionary pressure to live longer, all right? There was no, sage advice of the elderly or wealth that was accumulated, but that's changed. And we just haven't had the genetics change, but guess what? We're now going from evolution by natural selection, Darwinism, to evolution by human direction, and we're beginning to understand how to decipher and perhaps modify the genes of aging. So let's talk about this. Some of the things that are happening right now that are extraordinary. The first is genome sequencing. When Craig Venter sequenced the human genome in 2001, it cost $100 million and 9 months.
9 months, yeah.
Right.
What is it, $1,000 now, or is it less?
Since then, it's dropped down to $1,000 today.
And how long does it take now?
And it takes about 4 or 5 hours. The prediction from Illumina, the major company in the field, is they expect it to be at $100 and 1 hour within the next 2 years.
Wow.
Right, so we're seeing a millionfold price performance reduction, or a millionfold price reduction for the 3.2 billion letters that are your genome. And your genome code for exactly who you are, and I for who I am. And besides
until CRISPR.
Until CRISPR. That's next.
That starts to change it all.
So now we have technology for being able to go in and edit your genome. And that technology, originally the first terminology, CRISPR-Cas9, caught people's attention. And ultimately, that is demonetizing and becoming something that a high school kid can do.
Well, they're selling them on eBay.
It's crazy.
It's like, who would have thought in a trillion years, when Craig started this process? Because Ray was brought in and said, how long is this going to take? It's going to take a century. It's going to take $100 billion. And Ray said no. And after 7 years, tell them the statistic. After 7 years, was it 1% that they had only decoded?
So they had decoded, they had sequenced just 1% of the human genome, 1% of the 3.2 billion letters by the 7th year of the Human Genome Project. And everyone said, well, if you extrapolate this, it's going to take 99 times, times 7 years, it's going to be hundreds of years before we have the genome. But Ray said, no, this technology is doubling in power. And so, it's 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and 64, 128, and you're done. So 7 doublings later, and in fact, 7 years later, the human genome was fully sequenced.
Just as Ray predicted.
Just as Ray predicted. He's damn good at those predictions.
It's unbelievable. So, but let's talk about what are the options that we have. There's all these options for increasing length of a life. Let's talk about a few of them here. CRISPR being one, the actual editing of the genes. So if you had diabetes, now then there's the moral question. that doesn't just change my life, it changes my lineage,
Yeah.
right?
It is. Well, one of the things that's interesting is that 32,000 out of 50,000 diseases are caused by a single letter being wrong in your genome.
I didn't know that. That's wild.
And this concept of CRISPR technologies, in particular CRISPR 2.0, which is a technology for modifying a single nucleotide, you have the ability to literally, liberate your family future from that disease that's been a problem genetically. And I know families like that, and probably you do as well. Imagine being able to go in and fix it once and for all, forever, right? Not having to take that risk. But when I start to think about what are the technologies, and there are probably a dozen companies you and I are tracking. We're writing, as you said, our next book. It's called Life Force, on how to live effectively long enough to live forever, but how do we
The real key is, while you're here, having the passion, the strength, the energy, the vitality to live without the fear of disease, or if something happens, to be able to do something immediately. And some of the tools that have existed that when we were at the Vatican with all these stem cell companies and immuno companies, is seeing how cancer's changing from the mindset of, oh my God, these horrible cells that are always in us, and we're going to destroy them and destroy healthy cells too with radiation or chemotherapy, to, hey, the immune system is regulating cancer cells all the time. But if it becomes overwhelmed for whatever reason, then all of a sudden cancer gets out of control. And the tools that are out there, you and I have met so many people that were stage 4, sent home to die, and now they're totally healthy from some of the technologies that exist right now. They're in phase 2, phase 3 trials.
So let's hit on a few of these. So one of the companies that actually we had at Abundance 360 last year, Unity Biosciences. Unity is funded by a guy named Jeff Bezos. You may have heard of him. They just went public. And it turns out that as our cells grow, they stop growing after a period of time, or they become a cancer. Yeah. And these are called senescent cells. And these senescent cells have a problem when they stick around, they're not being functional, and they cause a immune reaction, or they cause basically inflammation. And so what Unity Biosciences figured out is how to identify these senescent cells and how to kill them. Wow. And they have these senolytic medicines that when you remove these senescent cells, it actually revitalizes you. And in the animal models they've been doing, it's a 30 to 40% extension of healthy life.
That's wild.
It is incredible. Another one that you and I are actually partnering in is the whole stem cell world.
That's right.
So our dear friend Bob Hariri, one of the top stem cell scientists on the planet, did the work and realized that as you age, two things are occurring in your body. Number one, the number of stem cells flowing through your bloodstreams, in your fat, in your bone, in your muscle, in your brain, that are there typically to repair damage, those stem cells reduce orders of magnitude, 100-fold, 1,000-fold less stem cells, and therefore their ability to actually go and cause the repair isn't there.
Because every moment your body's breaking down and it's being recreated.
You are not the man you used to be, right? Our body is completely...
Hopefully better.
You are, pal. If anybody is, you are. But none of our cells are the cells we had a decade ago.
That's right.
Everything is turned over, including in your brain, throughout your body. Your blood cells turn over 120 days, different parts of your gut even faster than that. But at the end of the day, your stem cell supply diminishes substantially, but in addition, the stem cells in your body have been abused at flying at 38,000 feet. We spend way too much time in airplanes, high radiation levels, epigenetic changes. And so one of the opportunities is, can you replenish your stem cells with sort of younger, more vibrant stem cells?
And Bob's genius. He's the top stem cell expert in the world. And he's also, he works on people. And he was describing to me, like when a baby is born with, because we're describing the different quality of stem cells. Adipose-taking skin stem cells. They're not as powerful, obviously, as bone marrow, which is not as powerful as cord stem cells that are differentiated, which you can't get in the United States, or placenta. And he was saying that he goes in when when a woman has a child in a spinal bifida, he'll go into the womb, open the woman's womb, take out the baby, the fetus. If the baby's born with that spine outside the body, they die, or they're born, for life, they're crippled. And so he goes in, takes it out, sews the spine back in, puts it back in, and 4 weeks later, the child is born, and there is no scar, there is no impact. Yeah. And it's because the placenta stem cells and growth factors there are so powerful, they heal. And he said that's why no woman has ever transferred cancer to her baby when she's pregnant, because that's how powerful it is. In addition, most of us know that if a baby loses its fingers in the first couple days of life, it still has those initial stem cells, those fetal stem cells, it'll grow it back like a salamander. But after that, now we get into the Wnt pathway, which is why we're here at SamuMed. So maybe we should touch base on it, because this is mind-boggling stuff.
So a company called SamuMed, they're the most famous biotech company you've never heard of. They've got a valuation north of $12 billion. Has developed the ability to manipulate and understand one of the fundamental pathways of life. And it's called the WNT pathway, the Wnt pathway. That is,
it's a signaling system.
It affects cell-to-cell signaling, and so it's a pathway preserved from the earliest forms of multicellular life to today.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And it's in all animals or all vertebrates?
It's all animals.
All animals. That's
all animals. And in fact, the WNT name comes from a wingless variant of Drosophila, where it was first discovered. Anyway, the point being that they
remember that was very important.
That will be on the test.
He knows this kind of stuff. He's going to test you later. I want to make sure you pay the Wnt pathway.
But the potential for this technology, and I think we can talk about this, but I mean, to regrow hair, get rid of wrinkles, regrow the cartilage in your legs,
they got this. What I was trying to explain to you is, after those fingers, after 10 days, those babies' fingers are not going to grow back. Everything in your body is built by these stem cells, and the Wnt signaling pathway signals you need to send this many and create brain stem cells, this many heart stem cells. And as you know, as time goes by, that Wnt pathway becomes weaker. They've figured out for 10 years this company's been around. $12+ billion valuation, haven't put out a product yet. The richest people in the world all want their money there because they want to get first access. And we were there when they first showed their first exposures to the medical community, and now they're going to out like 48 journals this next year. Yeah. But one of the things, they'll give you one injection one time.
In your knee, in your shoulder.
If you got osteoarthritis, it's gone in 3 months or 4 months. You literally grow new cartilage. They've got an injection that they do that'll actually grow more, discs in your spine. There are 8 cancers. We met several people there, but one in particular who was sharing with us that she was sent home, 4-stage cancer, but she's a fighter. She got part of that Wnt pathway group. She's cancer-free right now. It is mind-boggling what they're doing.
We are alive during the most extraordinary time ever in human history. I mean, when I think about it, in the Abundance Digital community, you guys know this. Our longevity group is one of the most vibrant conversations going on, and my job, I feel, is to deliver to you and to them every breakthrough I hear about and share. Because ultimately, you want to live a life that is healthy. I love this from our friend Joe Paula. She said, he quoted this to me a while ago. He said, a man who has, his health, or woman, has 1,000 dreams, and he or she does not, has but one.
Yeah, survive.
It's true, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's all about your health, first and foremost. So these are just a few, right? We have a whole slew of other technologies, the whole young blood experiments going on right now, the serums, and it's not a matter of getting a transfusion, being Dracula, but what are the proteins? And my venture fund, Bold Capital, that you're a part of as well, is investing in a number of these longevity companies. What are the proteins that are present in youthful blood, not in aging, or vice versa? What is it in aging that's there, but not in youth? You have to pull out of the blood. So we're starting to attack longevity from a variety of worlds, and you've got tens, hundreds of billions of dollars going into that, because you still can't take it with you, can you?
So true.
So you want to
listen. Talk for a second. I know we want to do some personal questions to wrap up, but talk for a little bit about the community, because I am very passionate about the community. We're partners in all the things that we do, but I love that besides the 360 Abundance program that people can come to, that now anyone in the world can participate, and you over deliver. And I'm your friend, but you really do. Tell a little bit about what people get. So if you want to be part of the community, you know what you can participate in.
So the Abundance 360 program that takes place at Beverly Hills every year, it's $15,000, and it's sold out a year in advance. We have people who have signed up for 3 years in advance. I love that, because it means I'm delivering value to these CEOs. So we created, I'm taking a page from the playbook I teach, which is how do you
scale?
How do you dematerialize, demonetize, and democratize it? So we created a digital version of the community called Abundance Digital, and everyone who's part of that, first of all, gets all 3 days of the live event,
wherever you
backstage activities, wherever you are. But then we have an amazing app for the Abundance Digital community, which I'm in every day, making comments, answering questions. We have subgroups in there on longevity, on cryptocurrency, on massively transformative purposes, and moonshots. And you can find those members of community that are near you. And as you know, and I know this, we're lucky. We live in these communities
where everybody's inspired.
where everybody's inspired.
They're looking for answers. They're sharing them. It's pitching and catching. It's not just pitching.
Nothing is impossible. No stupid ideas, right? It isn't, because a lot of the stuff we're talking about and brain-computer interface and living 100 years extra, I mean, this stuff is insane for most people's conversations, but it's not here. So we do 40 webinars a year. We have 2 I do every month and 2 that my team does. We have an active cryptocurrency blockchain community there. And at the end of the day, it's about finding people who think like you or who are excited like you to understand the impact of exponential technologies and abundance mindset.
Yes, it's knowing the road ahead. I mean, if you ask me what's the most important skill in life, leaders anticipate, losers react. If you've ever played a video game against a child, it's a humiliating experience in most cases, not because they're younger and faster and quicker, they always win. Why do they win? Because they played this game a million times. They know the first bad guy's on the right, the next guy, they can anticipate. You're reacting and you're dead in 3 seconds and you wait for your second turn for 45 minutes. So knowing the road ahead is, I think, one of the greatest gifts in life. And this community is filled with people obsessed, especially starting with this man, with knowing the road ahead so that we can find a way not only for us to benefit, but to benefit our families, our community, our world. And I think that's the greatest gift. And what you're not charging $15,000 for this. What are you charging? It's like a tenth or...
Yeah, it's $1,500 for the year. And it's a full year, very active. We have meetups where I'll meet with the community. A lot of platinum members are involved, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, my mission, and I obsess about this, is to understand how these technologies are going to transform every industry, right? Yep. So it's a deep dive into the healthcare, the education, the insurance, the finance, all of these areas.
And you need to know these if you're a business owner so you can understand the pathways of becoming. It's I always tell people in business, you have to manage the business you're in because that's the business you own, but you also have to be managing 2 businesses, the business you're going to become. And the business you're going to become is massively affected by the changes that are going to happen that affect competition, affect the way people expect to be served. And this is that advanced look at that. So I'm not being paid anything. I don't take any piece of this. I just want to interview because I want more people to take advantage of what you have to offer and what this community has to offer, because that's the real power.
And it is, because I go to this community to help on designing X Prize, I go to this community on our future of work, and I go to this community to really get a finger on the pulse of what are the most important things they want to hear about, because I'm out meeting with amazing people like yourself, right? And at the end of the day, it's about giving you access to the information that you need to plan your life, transform your life. We're alive during the most extraordinary time ever in human history, and I'm clear we're going to create more wealth in this next 10 years than we have in the entire century by a long shot, by not even close. So
it's the power of compounding, and it's happening at a level that's never happened in human history. It's pretty damn exciting. But you don't get to benefit if you find out about it after the fact. You'll get a benefit, but you'll be a passive passenger as opposed to an active person who's helping to shape the conversation and shape where your world, your company, your family goes and lives, and the quality of life that you're going to experience.
2 of the things that we talk about a lot in the community that are a couple of questions that my community members have asked me to ask you, if I could transition. We spend a lot of time in Abundance Digital Talk helping people understand what is their purpose. All right, what is not even their purpose, what's your massively transformative purpose? What is it that you wake up with, captures your shower time, you obsess with, you go asleep dreaming about, not what your mom or dad wanted you to do or your teacher, but what's in your heart and soul? What's the most meaningful thing that you want to do? So Pal, and people can have more than one, especially at your career level here. Where's your MTP? What's your purpose? How would you describe that?
It's constantly finding the ways to improve the quality of life for people at every level I can, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. But the way in which I want to do that is in a way in which it becomes something that where people grow so much that their life becomes about contributing as well. It's like, it's that virtuous cycle. What I try to do is I've always seen myself kind of as a kind of Trojan horse. People come to me, they want to grow their business 100%. They want to lose 50 pounds. They want to find the relationship they want. But what they need is a life that's meaningful. What they need is to find something larger than themselves that they want to serve, because when that happens, your effing energy transforms. Because motive matters. If you're just trying to do something for yourself, you get insights because you're part of life, and life supports life, right? But if you're trying to support your family, you get more insight. If you're trying to do a community, if it's truly humanity and it's not bullshit, it doesn't matter what other people, what it is, you get a different level of insight. So I'm constantly looking at that. So, for me, it starts with food is one of those pieces. We're feeding 1 billion people, and we want to do a sustainable billion. We're at 100 million people a year right now. I'm providing fresh water for 250,000 people a day, but I want to get it to 1 million in India, because kids die every day from waterborne disease. It's the easiest thing to solve.
It's crazy,
It's
right?
not.
Half the disease burden on planet Earth is due to unclean drinking water.
I got a new plane. I've started thinking about this, going, what's my carbon footprint? I did my homework on it. It takes 3,000 trees to take care of my whole carbon footprint, jet and all. So I planted 5 million trees this year. I'm going to plant 100 million trees. Because I want to create and I'm not just planting them in Africa in these forests. They're garden forests, and we're teaching the farmers there they don't have to leave,
awesome,
and they plant a new crop every month instead of one a year, so they're not at risk. And so you're changing the poverty line. Education with what we're doing in our X Prize and making that open source so that everybody on the planet can do it. So to me, it's finding the answers that change billions of lives, but also helping the individual and the group. And to me, that makes life where it's hard to sleep at night and you want to get up as early as you can, not because you have to, because you get to. I always tell people the difference between rich and poor, it's not money. It's psychology. It's the difference between have to versus get to.
Yeah.
When you shift your psychology to get to, when you become a creator and you stop thinking you're a manager of circumstance here, but you're a creator of not only your life, you're a creator of your family's life, of your community's life. When you take that mindset, it's amazing how life completely changes. So to me, it's a never-ending process.
So we'll ask the next question, which is, where do you help someone find their massively transformative purpose? And
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'll ask them to look at some interesting tricks of what did you want to do as a child before your parents told you, or school teachers, or if I gave you $1 billion and said use this to change the world, what would you do with it? What are some other tricks there?
I think that it's getting around where it's better and letting something hit you. Most people don't have enough exposure to different types of people, environments. And most people, they believe what they believe because they grew up in a community and that was the religion. They grew up in the community, that was the way of looking at life. And so what I try to do is take people and put them into experiences. Take somebody who has a certain belief structure, take them to Varanasi, India. It's not as corny as that may sound, or weird as that sound. And you see a world where all these people have a completely different belief. There's 300 different gods in their mindset. He's a personal God that they have. And they all believe they have different approaches to nirvana. But if you go to Varanasi and you die there, you die happy because you know you're not coming back. And you see people that are dying that are so joyful. We went to Mother Teresa's place there, and there's all these men and women there. And this one woman was like 92 and had some broken English. I'm talking to her. She was pissed off she was dying, and she came there to die, and they saved her, and she's mad. Right? She really was. Right? It's a different meaning, because to them, they burn the bodies 24 hours a day. Their wood's stacked up. They've been doing it for years, and then the rest of it goes into the water. But there's no crying, there's no sadness. It's one of those fascinating things. So you can tell people this, but when you witness it day after day, you start going, wow. For them, the body's the t-shirt. The soul is everlasting, and it starts to change the way you look at life. And you start to, when you have a different way of looking at life, when you have different experiences of life, you ask new questions. New questions lead to new answers lead to purpose. But you got to ask a lot of questions, and you got to get yourself in different environments, and something will hit you. But if you stay in the environment you're in, you're not going to find your purpose.
Yep.
Right? Because you're going to get the same stimulus, and you're going to have the same response, and most people are habituated to that.
All right. Bree asks a question: how do you hire? So a lot of folks are building businesses in our community.
Yeah.
We've talked about this. There are two closing questions because we're short on time. How do you hire, and then how do you find your soulmate?
Oh, that's all in 2 minutes.
And
How you hire? There's 3 questions.
Yes.
And how to hire. And by the way, this can help you know whether it's the right person for it, or soulmate, whether it's going to be a lasting relationship. So let's start on the business side because it's less complex,
yes.
right? We all know it's not who you hire, it's who you fail to fire that destroys your business very often. But there's 3 questions you got to ask. Question number 1 is, can they do the job? If you're interviewing somebody for the 4th interview, if you've met their family, in my case, if someone gets to me at an interview, they're already been pre-interviewed by multiple people. Can they do the job? The answer is yes. Once you know they can, if you're dating and you've been dating for a year or 2, they probably can do the job. They can probably be the person. The more important question is number 2. Will they do a great job at that job long term? That's the bigger question, because everybody sells in the beginning, and most people, when they get hired, they really do a decent job in the beginning. But will they sustain it? And that's controlled by 2 things. Are their goals aligned with the job, and is their nature aligned with it? So, for example, for a long time, I had a woman who was spectacular. Her name's Lizzie. She's still a dear friend of my family, but she was our personal assistant for 6 years, traveled the world with us 24/7. We love her, she loves us. She's got married and has kids now, so she's no longer our personal assistant, and so we looked for somebody. After having her for 6 years, it was so wonderful. Now, in 12 months, we had 5 different assistants. We went to the LA Personal Assistant Association. Makes sense. We're near LA. We're in San Diego at the time. Lots of them up there. And for some reason, they started out great and none of them lasted. They didn't seem to have their heart into it. And then one day, what are their goals? They went to LA to become a personal assistant, not to be a personal assistant. They want to be an actor. They want to be an actress. They want a singer. They want to talk to Pitbull and my clients on the phone, or Anthony Hopkins, or WME, or whoever it is. And so they take care of certain people who are my real high-end clients, but I want everybody taken care of that way. And they weren't taking care of my family. So I realized the goals weren't aligned. And then nature. Can you take somebody who's extremely introverted and turn them into a great salesman for your company? Can they sell well? Yes. Will they long-term? No way on earth. Because that job requires you to be extroverted to some extent, to connect, to initiate, to overcome rejection. You don't do that when you're introverted. Would you take a very verbose and let's say extroverted person and make them your accountant? Could they do a job? Yes, they could. Will they long term? Hell no, because the main job is not being reinforced by their nature. And then the last question, third one, is it the right team fit? Because sometimes you get somebody whose goals are aligned and the job reinforces them and they're incredibly skilled, but they're horrible to the rest of the people around you. They don't mix. And those people, very often people won't let go of because they make a lot of sales to them or they manage things well. They're afraid of the loss. But if you get rid of them, the level of energy unleashed in the organization and the new people you pull in go through the roof. There's questions for a relationship. Can we really do this together long term? Really is, you have your goals aligned. They don't have to be all your goals. But there's a gentleman I know well that was in Fiji one day, and my wife and I, we were flying commercial in those days, and so there's a line, an immigration line, and so I said, let's go on this line. She goes, no, I'm gonna go that line. I said, no, this is shorter. She goes, that's shorter. I said, fine, take your line, I'll take mine. So we're being stupid, right? And we're racing and teasing, just having fun. And then this man hears my voice and says, Tony. I turn around and see this guy. I haven't seen him in years, really, really successful man. And he said, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm coming to my resort. He goes, you have a resort here? I said, yeah, home and resort. And he says, I said, what are you doing here? He said, I'm on my honeymoon. I said, well, where's your bride? She's doing the same thing. She's in his line, right next to my wife. We're both like this, right? How'd you meet? He tells me the story. And I said, how long have you been together? And he says, I think he said 12 years. I said, and you're just getting married now? How come? He goes, well, she wore me down. And I'm thinking, oh my God, right? So I said, I'm trying to figure out how to pick this up. So I said, are you gonna have kids? It's a typical question. He goes, no. I've been married twice before. I got kids there. He's at a stage of life at 50, but she's like 31. And I said, have you had this discussion with her? He goes, yeah, this is the deal. If we get married, then we don't have the kid. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this man is going to have an education. It's going to be a painful one. So I get through the line and we go to meet my wife and I, and we introduce each other to each other's spouses. And afterwards, she looks at me like this. I look at her like this. I said, what'd you learn? She goes, what'd you learn? I said, they're going to have some problems. She goes, yeah. She told her that he said we're not having kids, but she said we'll have them within 24 months. And that's exactly what happened. And unfortunately, that relationship did not maintain itself. So you got to have goals that are aligned at least on the important areas, and then the nature. Do your natures reinforce each other, and are you the right team fit? Those would be ways to help you.
Awesome. I'm going to sneak in one more question from Chuck about kids.
Great.
Inspiring and guiding kids today. What are your thoughts? And because people ask me this question all the time in terms of what technologies and so forth, and it's not about what technologies they learn about. What are your thoughts?
I think the most important thing to teach your child is that life is not something it's not about what you get, it's about what you're here to give. No human being is happy who just gets. They get it. They just get into entitlement and then they're angry it's not enough or it's not more. With all my kids, I've taught them from when they're this tall, my mom did it with me. My mom had a lot of challenges, but one beautiful thing she did is I remember I was 4 years old or 5, maybe it was 5, and I had this little birthday and I got these balloons and I was enjoying them, and she said to me, do you want to just hang on these balloons or would you like to go, we lived across the street from this convalescent hospital, and see some of those old people and give them the balloons? And so, interesting concept for a child. But when I gave him the balloons and I saw these lemons just smiling, this old man grinning from ear to ear, man, to this day, I love to light people up. That's why I do what I do. And it hit my soul so much, and the rest of my life has been geared that way. All of my kids have had that experience as well. I remember my youngest son, Jarek, we were not far from here. We're in San Diego right now. We're in Oceanside. And it was Thanksgiving. We built these beautiful baskets, and we'd gone to all these homeless people, help them. And we went to this park. We'd run out of people to help, and we still had more food. And we asked a church, and they said some homeless people go to the park. And we went, and there's a man on the bathroom floor, covered in rags, asleep. And so I gave Jarek, and Jarek at the time was probably 6, and the basket was bigger, and so I'm helping him to set it down. And he sits down next to the man. All of a sudden, the man grabs his arm, and my son yelled. My heart went up like this, but then he just took his hand like this and went. And my son just cried uncontrollably. I cried uncontrollably. Wow. And Jarek, my youngest, is one of the most contribution-driven human beings. I'm so proud of him as a man. He's not yet a father, but he will be soon, I think. And the way he lives his life is so beautiful because it was marked by that first experience that life is calling to us to give something. That's when people feel alive. What are you here to give is the real question, not what are you here to get. Nothing wrong with getting. It's a beautiful thing. And you can't give without getting. You get the best things. You get the spirit, the emotion, you get the abundance, you get the growth, you get all the expansion of your soul. But I think that is the number one thing more important than anything else for a child. Then technology and tools can be used for a higher purpose as well as for their entertainment and education.
Beautiful, brother. What a great place to leave this off. As always, thank you.
Love you, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Check out the abundance community. Make it happen.